Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is History 102. This is a great big history podcast. Today we do the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Why don't the Ottomans take over the world? When we left off, they were looking good. They were diverse. They were willing to tap into other people's non-Ottoman, non-Turkish talent, whether it be Persian, Arab, African, European. They had conquered North Africa. They were conquering the Middle. They had conquered the Middle East. They had united the Middle East, the three great pieces of the Middle East: Egypt, Asia Minor, and Mesopotamia. Few other civilizations had ever done that. Nobody since the Romans had done that. They're gunpowder troops. They are disciplined. They have wealth. They have a capital in Istanbul, which is generating an enormous amount of education, but also money. So what happened? Well, they're hooking up the Silk Road just as Tamerlane is destroying it, and the Ming are building the Great Wall to end West Asian trade as the Ming are turning to isolation. So they're hooking themselves up to the Silk Road right at the end of the Silk Road's use as a highway. The Silk Road is being closed down. The Ming at the eastern end are closing it down. The Chinese goods are not going to continue to go west. And Tamerlane is ripping up the middle. So they're hooking themselves up to a grid, to a power grid that is about to run out of energy. Less trade equals less money, which equals less education and less technology. The Europeans wanting to do trade with India and China are going to set out by sea. Columbus is 1492. They're going to go around the Turks and the Italians. Now, the Turks beat up the Italians in the Middle East, but they're the relations. The Turks and the Italians are both fighting each other and trading with each other because that's where the money's to be made. So when the Portuguese first, then the Spanish, and then later the French and the British set out for China, they're setting out to go around the Italians who are making all the money. See the Italian Renaissance. And by doing so, also go around the Turks. Now, why does this matter? It's because the money you make is on sales tax. The easiest tax to collect is sales tax. So the whole point of hooking Istanbul up to the Silk Road was to generate a huge amount of trade. The Italians would come to Constantinople / Istanbul, buy stuff, go back to Italy, sell stuff. The Spanish, French, and British would come to Italy, buy stuff, bring it back with them, go back to their homes, sell stuff there. That's how it worked in the Renaissance. So the idea was, we'll make money. But no, there's less money. The Silk Road is dying, and the Europeans are finding other routes. Now, good rulers can compensate for this. So there's less money. Okay, but they still have smart people, good universities, a gunpowder army. Good rulers can compensate. They can make do with less. We've seen them in 101. We'll see them in 102. Bad rulers and lots of money is bad. Bad rulers and no money is terrible. Good rulers with lots of money, watch out. Good rulers with not a lot of money can still accomplish great things. Alexander, for example, is a good ruler with no money. The early Roman Republic, when it fights Carthage. Good rulers, not a lot of money. The early Roman Empire, the empire of the good emperors, of Trajan and Hadrian, Marcus Antonius Pius and Marcus Aurelius, that is good rulers plus lots of money. The 3rd century crisis in Rome, though, is bad rulers with lots of money. And it's a freaking disaster. So, all right, the Silk Road is drying up. That's bad. The Ming are turning to isolation. That's bad. But the Turks still dominate Southeastern Europe, North Africa, the Middle East. There's still a lot there. There's 25 million people. There's a lot of education. This is one of the richest parts in the world, going all the way back to the founding of civilization. You can do good things. So when we take a look at the map, if you're on the video, you'll see the trade routes. The Silk Road trade routes start in Eastern Asia. They go across Central Asia. They hook up into the Indian trade. They go across Persia. They go across the Middle East, and boom, they end in Constantinople, Istanbul. That's the traditional Silk Road world trade routes since about 100 AD. So for 1,500 years, this is the way goods moved in the world. Now we see our Dutch trade routes of 1600. They leave the Netherlands. They go through the English Channel. And where do they go? They go to North America. They go to South America. They go to West Africa. And they go around Africa to India, Indonesia, China, Japan. They skip North Africa. They skip Asia Minor. They skip the Levant and Mesopotamia. They skip Arabia. They skip Central Asia. They skip Western China. The Dutch trade routes literally in between 1600 and 1650 do not touch any of the places the Turks own or are connected to. So European trade, West European trade, is going to go right around the Italians, and the Italians are going to get poor. It's going to go right around the Turks are going to get poor. It's going to go right around Central Asia, one of the richest places on earth for 1,000 years, going to get poor. And it's going to hook into North America, the eastern coast of South America, the eastern coast of China, the coasts of India, and a couple of cities in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Japan. So the old trade systems are about to become useless. And so if you invested a whole lot of energy on those trade routes, that was money. That's a sunken cost. That's money lost. Central Asia is about to go from a wealthy place to the place that time forgot. It is going to be a backwater. And it's hard to explain just how monumental the shift in world trade is by going to the oceans. It's a complete change of a 1,500-year tradition of trade. All right, well, remember those good rulers? The Turks don't get them. They get 13 bad rulers in a row. They get bad ruler after bad ruler after bad ruler. There's less money. And what do these guys do? More decadence. They don't stop spending on their pleasures. Their pleasures just take up a bigger part of their spending. So the harem and the sex palace. There are rulers who go into the sex palace. They get crowned as sultan. Thank you. I am caliph of the faith, of the one true faith. Thank you. Where's the sex palace? Over there? All right, I'm going to go in there and I'll see you when I die. Bye. And they go in, and there are ones who never come out again. They go in, and they give their lives over to decadence. They leave the running of the Ottoman Empire to viziers, to others. And so that means less authority, which means less unity. Suleiman the Magnificent ran his empire in the 1520s. Mehmed II ran the Ottoman Empire in the 1450s. These were rulers who ran the show. They were involved. They picked their governors. They had their generals. They had a legitimacy and authority. By the mid-1600s, these guys don't care. There's less money. There's less to do. They're not interested in conquering the world. They're interested in decadence and pleasure, in sex and opium, and making sure their brothers don't overthrow them. So they murder most of their brothers, the other people with legitimacy. So who are these Grand Viziers? Well, that's Jafar from Aladdin. Who are these guys? Smart guys. Jacked-in guys. They're part of the political elite. But they're also not family. They also can't be sultan. They're not Christians. They have to be Muslims. They're too high to be Christians. But they have their own families, which means they have their own loyalties. So some are very good. Some look at the problems and say, I'm going to run this show. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get the Ottomans. I'm going to get our armies. I'm going to keep rebellions down. I'm going to make money. If the Sultan ever pops his head out of the Sex Palace, I am going to be ready to show him how awesome everything is. Most, though, are selfish. Most know they don't have any oversight. They were put in charge. So they're more interested in nothing going bad because they know the Sultan is in the Sex Palace. The only way the Sultan is leaving the Sex Palace is if things go so badly, he has to leave and ask WTF, which means I, as Vizier, am in trouble. So what is the effect of this? The effect is conservatism. The very thing that the Turks weren't when they were winning. It's conservatism. It's not to win the ball game. It's to prevent defense. It's to not lose. That's the goal for most of these viziers. So who do they put in charge of things? Family. Their own family. People who are loyal. People they could trust to do what they tell them to do. And remember, they're going to pay those people really well to make sure they're loyal, and they'll get a cut of that loyalty. They'll get a cut of that contract. So the Grand Viziers, some are good, some are bad. Most are out for themselves. Now, sometimes that's good for the Ottoman Empire, because sometimes the out for yourself is in alignment with what is good for me is good for the Ottomans, good for the empire. But a lot of times, what's good for me is not exactly good for the Ottomans, not exactly good for the empire. It just can't be so bad the Sultan executes me. So you play a lot of defense. You're playing conservatism. You're playing very conservative government system. You don't want change. You want things to stay as they are. Well, what about the Janissaries? Well, the Janissaries are educated, disciplined. They could execute the vizier. They could take over. They could put in a sultan. A Muslim sultan has to be Muslim. They can't, as a Christian, take over the Ottoman Empire. They won't have any legitimacy. But they could put one of their generals, a Muslim general, in charge, like the Roman army did, and put Constantine in charge, or Diocletian. Right? The Janissaries, who are fighting to keep the rebellions down, who have to fight Europeans in the northwest, who have to fight the Persians in the east, they have a vested interest in things not falling apart, right? Right? So they can keep the empire together. They'll get rid of the bad emperors, the bad sultans, they'll put good ones in charge, and though Christian, they'll keep the Ottoman Empire running. Turns out, nope, they become conservative as well. They want to protect their privileges because they got a lot of economic privileges. They got rewarded for being loyal. Well, those economic privileges were worth more than the money they were making from going off to war. They weren't conquering new places in 1600, 1650. They weren't making any money. What they were doing was trying to hold the empire together. Oh, go fight these Arabs in rebellion 1,000 miles away. They don't want to do that. They want to stay in Istanbul and make money off trade. They want to make a gun manufacturing company that then sells guns to the Sultan, who then gives them to the Janissaries. That's where you make money. And so what they start to do is anti-modernity policies. They also realize that if the rest of the army becomes as modernized as they are, or more importantly, become more modernized than they are, they will lose their power. So they have a vested interest in 1, Turks not getting guns, 2, Arabs, Persians, and Africans not getting guns, and 3, sultans staying in the sex palace. And so they have anti-modernity policies. They have coups. They bring in weak leaders. Because when you get a leader who says, I am going to reform the army so that we could fight the Russians, so that we could fight in Africa, so we could conquer the world, the Janissaries shoot that guy. And then they turn to his brother and say, are you going to send us 1,000 miles away? And that guy says, nope. And they say, are you going to spend the next 10 years in the sex palace, having a wonderful, happy time, and leave us alone? Great. You're the Sultan. Good. Congratulations. He puts the Sultan hat on. He goes into the sex palace. Done. So you have a series of weak rulers. So even good sultans and viziers are stuck. They can't change. Unlike Peter the Great, who is in the same problem, Peter the Great was able to break his Janissaries. Now, they were called the Streltsy, but he was able to crush them. He created a whole other army of mercenaries. He created a secret army that he used to crush his Janissaries. The Turks are never able to do that. Good sultans are never able to do that. All right. So we have bad rulers. We have no money or less money. Bad rulers, selfish viziers, a selfish government, a conservative and insular army, but at least we're not being attacked by anybody, right? No one else is changing, right? No, absolutely not. The 1600s is a time of massive change. You get Swedish light cannon and the military revolution. Now, if you go back, there's in the video what we're watching, you have Swedish light cannon, these copper cannons, right? Because the Swedes have some of the best iron and copper in the world in the 1500s. And so they are able to make more efficient cannon than anybody else. And so this starts a military revolution that is guns and cannons, and the Swedes will have an excellent battlefield artillery arm. But if we go back to the 1450s, right, all the way back to the Constantinople guns, look at how huge that is if you're on the video. The guns that shot at the walls of Constantinople were massive, and they got so hot they could only be shot once or twice per day. 150 years later, the Swedes are creating cannon that they can line up and shoot on the battlefield, hook up to a horse, and take wherever on the battlefield they need it. So suddenly, cannon's light, and you can use it against people. The Turkish cannon wasn't light. It was still large because of all the conservatism. You get science, Da Vinci, Galileo, Newton. The idea and all that science is going to be poured into, like Da Vinci, into military technology. You get printing in the Reformation, more education in Europe. the spread of literacy, the spread of knowledge, new universities, the spread of education, European shipbuilding. At the Battle of Lepanto, the Europeans, the Italians, will crush, absolutely crush, a Turkish fleet. Now, the Turks will build another fleet that will allow them to beat up on North African Arabs and Berbers, but then Napoleon will show up, and Nelson will show up in the 1800s, in the 17 and the 1800s, and obliterate the Turkish fleet again and completely take over the Mediterranean. The French will just steal Egypt right from the Turks. The Mughals coming out of Afghanistan will unite northern India. The Manchus are conquering China and Central Asia. The Russians are moving into the forests of Siberia and conquering Central Asia. The Western Europeans are moving to the Americas, stealing, murdering, but getting rich off the plunder of two continents, two relatively untouched continents. Meanwhile, the Turks are conservative and not changing and staying the same year after year after year. Meanwhile, all of this revolution is going on. So that by 1800, the Turks are completely left behind. By the 1690s, they're going to try to grab Vienna one last time. They're going to throw their armies at Vienna, and they're going to lose. And when they lose, their entire army falls apart, and they lose Hungary. They lose this. They becomes this open. Suddenly, there's this open frontier in Europe that didn't exist. It used to be a hard line. The Ottomans had a line. That's what they owned. And the Habsburg Germans and the Poles and the Slavs owned the other parts of that border. Now, all of a sudden, there's an ongoing rolling frontier. And the question becomes, who gets what? Are the Poles going to get it? Are the Habsburgs going to get it? Are the Russians going to get it? Or are the Orthodox Slavs, Russians, going to take it over and rebuild the Byzantine Empire? Are the Catholic Slavs, the Poles, going to take it? Or are the Protestant or Catholic Germans, the Habsburgs, the Austrians, are they going to take it? The answer to that question is actually going to get us into the Crimean War in the 1850s and World War I in 1914. Who gets the Ottoman Empire as the Ottoman Empire falls apart is one of those questions that is going to get Europeans to murder each other in large numbers. So in the 1700s, Russia takes over much of the northern Black Sea area in the Ukraine, who are run by Turkish allies of the Ottoman. In 1793, Napoleon crushes the Turkish army in Egypt. You get the collapse of Ottoman Africa. No longer can the Turks claim that they can dominate Islam. Suddenly, the Europeans are controlling large numbers of Muslims. In the 1800s, you get rebellion in Serbia and Greece. This is Lord Byron, the poet, going to Greece to go free the Greeks. And then he's completely disappointed because they're not the Greeks of Thucydides and Herodotus. They're sheep farmers from the 1800s. They're completely different people. But those rebellions show that, one, Europeans are willing to intervene in the domestic affairs of the Turks, and two, the Turks can't control provinces near them. Serbia is desperately important because it's on the road. It connects Constantinople, Istanbul, to Hungary, to Vienna. It follows the Danube River. You have to control Serbia. You have to control Belgrade if you're going to protect your own territories. The Byzantines knew the Romans knew this. The Byzantines knew this. The Turks know this. And by the early 1800s, they can't do it. In the 1850s, there's the Crimean War, where Europeans, the British and the French, are fighting the Russians over who will control the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans aren't even asked. They're not part of the war. So the Europeans are fighting each other over the future of the Turks. That's how weak the Turks have become by the 1850s. And by the 1920, you have the end, the final collapse. The Ottomans will get involved in World War I to try to They'll ally with the Germans. They'll try to recreate an Ottoman Empire, and their entire empire will be lost to them. The Arabs will revolt. The British and French armies will come rampaging through their territories. It looked like Ottoman Turkey was going to be broken up into pieces and colonized by Europeans. The Greeks wanted a piece. The Italians wanted a piece. That there wouldn't be a Turkey, that it would go back to some kind of classical Byzantine Roman map. That the Europeans were like, why should Muslims own what used to be part of Europe? By 1920, the Ottoman Turks have completely lost all power to determine their own future. It started with the loss of the Silk Road income, and then the decadence, and then the rebellions by the Janissaries and the selfishness of the viziers, and you just have this decadence and rolling and decay year after year after year, so that by the 19th century, they're called the sick man of Europe. It's like they exist, but they're dying. They were clearly in the who gets to run the world, a young growing power versus an old dying power. They're clearly an old dying power. So in our next episode, we're going to talk about the Americas. What made the Europeans so powerful? That they discovered North and South America and plundered it for all it was worth. The amount of money they are able to make off the plunder of two continents more than made up for their relatively poor start compared to India, China, or the Ottomans. Thank you very much.